We'll just dive right into this goal setting process. As you were kind of thinking through your goals, you're excited to do this. So I really want to hear, how was it doing it? Was it as exciting as you thought when you started doing it? Was it frustrating? Did you get bored with it? So what were some of the feelings, emotions, and thinking that you had?
Yeah, and I'll just think and walk through it. So I did it a week in advance because I knew there was something missing, right? When we started hitting priorities, and even just lasering in on the 2 to 3 priorities and starting to really realize, and just a very common topic of conversation for you and I can't do everything I want to do. And I think I'm doing myself such a disservice for anything that I'm doing because I want to do so much, and how much do you want to break up your day that ultimately just pushes the finish line that much further for everything? So it was really hard. And when I did it the first time, I did basically 2023, 2024, 2025. And what I basically did when I did that was everything I'm doing right now in 2023, which for the most part breaks out into some personal goals, ABC labeled and ball to public. And then a lot of what hit was really 2024 and 2025. And there was just a really gross misalignment of the realities of what I could seriously accomplish altogether. So that first kind of overview helped me realize I have to make some really difficult choices. And we've talked a little bit about this too in our previous coaching sessions where you always feel like you're gonna make a big decision one day and start or stop, yes or no. This was actually a moment where I really want to commit to making decisions on what I'm going to focus on. Yes, I reserve the right to go back and change my mind, but I definitely took a long, hard, honest look at the amount of time I have in my life and how big a lot of these challenges are and tried to narrow it down. So as I took away the information from our last session, went home, the material was really helpful too, focusing on people, play, personal, professional. It was good. I really also tried to do the personal and play, right? And there was a lot of things in there. I'm officiating a friend's wedding, a lot of challenges, right? Which I think boil up to probably bigger goals, even things like staying sober and social. So not very smart of a goal, but something I made sure to really think through. And although I'm not prioritizing it, it had a lot of similarities with our skills assessment where maybe I'm not working on that, but it's definitely a part of something I'm working on. So everything, it's a theme versus a goal. Yeah, and what I really landed on was 4 key things. One is really, and it's interesting too, because I don't, it's hard to say this, but I don't actually care about the goal. It's about what it's tying back to, right? So something like the marathon, and I did tag on, do you want me to take a pause?
No, keep going.
Okay, so with the marathon, I did tag on in 4 hours, which also made this a little bit bigger than we were initially talking about. But it's about being patient, right? And we've talked a lot about being the tortoise. And I've somewhat forgotten that as I'm hitting this boredom and monotony stage of my running. I'm focusing so much on running and the mileage, and I'm completely missing why I started in the first place, which was to work on something over an extended period of time that led up to a big bang, right? And so it was interesting just breaking out the marathon task and really remembering I don't actually care about running a marathon. I certainly don't want to look like a runner, but I love what it's doing to me mentally, right? And so the same thing goes for, and getting married is a big one. I didn't break that out or spend too much time on it, but there's a significant amount of work. I do think it's more of a challenge, which is weird to say, but I do know that there are tasks that I have to accomplish in there between now and let's say the end of first quarter. But there's a lot of dependencies on that one too. So I've talked to you a little bit about my family, her family, where, when. So I do think we're very much working on that, but in terms of papering it in, a couple more weeks, maybe a couple more months, but it's definitely a priority of ours. And I think that's probably the most important thing of a goal that I'm working on with somebody, because it is part of a much larger legacy that Kay and I are trying to build together. And then through the continued thought of legacy, a beautiful chaos is something that came to the surface. With everything that we've been doing and talking about, it's weird the way I've almost ran from it. I don't want to say like ran from it, but like I am going to build this technology platform. It is going to change the world. I'm super excited about it, and I'm going to carve out a substantial amount of time in my life the next 2 to 3 quarters to really do this. And that's like a really big change, which is interesting because it's the reason why I left what I was doing in October. But I kind of grabbed onto Bald because of non-competes and started working that and almost distracted myself with growing Labeled and all sorts of other things that I've been getting into, whether it's the video content, but just working through this process and remembering who I want to be and who I'm becoming. It had to be something that I was really intentional about. And then the other one is really just the revenue goals for Bald Republic, which breaks into something much more substantial, which is building a company. But I think that's still the best metric. I'm not talking about profit, I'm talking about revenue. But it is hard to, and we can have a whole other deep dive on that today of like what the right business metrics are, which really are just tying back to the value principle that I have. Because that's really the biggest part of why I'm focused on Bald Republic, is not to hit my revenue, but the revenue is something that resembles the impact I'm having based on the scale of the community that we're building.
It's great.
Yeah.
So I heard ABC, I heard marathon. What was it? And I heard marriage, but what was it the last one you had?
Hit full year revenue goal.
Okay.
So I kept it a little arbitrary, just more so for like the cameras, but the ABC one too specifically is to finish Series A.
Okay.
Which there's like a lot of other big challenges that go into that. But I think that's really like the specific goal that I'm tracking to.
This is great, man.
And I did thesaurus like other words for marriage and elope. I don't know why I don't like those words, but like Kay and I, we're just trying to like cement our partnership for life, And I don't know what my like aversion is to like getting married or eloping. I just don't like the words.
Yeah.
But I'm super excited for that, man. And it's something too, like the rest of the goals don't matter at all, right? Even the marathon thing, like it's funny because she has her competition the end of October. My first marathon will be early October. Like, you're not coming with me. She's like, I'm coming with you. I'm like, no, you're not. So it's just like one of those things too, where what I'm doing from a marathon perspective, like I actually associate to like being a great father. Like it's weird, but it is something that's so much more than just running a marathon.
I love it, man. So I'm curious some of the other things that you had as you're building this.
You want to see? So the play ones, I really want to build out our backyard. And somewhat in the lines of like the elope marriage, like there's so many dependencies, mostly how much of my own net worth and resources I'm going to be able to allocate to my home with so much variability with my companies and my legacies. So I think it's just figuring out the right timing. And I think you and I are good enough friends now where like, you can imagine my underground 8-story lair in my backyard. It's not just a pool.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I have in terms of like building that out. So that made the list, and it was something that was much more built out on my first pass. And I'm just not ready or willing to put time and energy into that. I think it'll be something we talk about and trying to make like the right iterative steps towards building what we want. But like I literally want to build an on-ramp to 285 in my backyard.
Is that legal?
Absolutely not. But I'm just going to charge people to use it. And
Oh,
it's
man.
Be my biggest and best business opportunity. It's just going to be an underground 285 on and off ramp.
Dude.
Which if you're from Atlanta, hit me up in 2 years.
Dude, I love it, man.
So there's a lot more on here too. Raise 50K for charity. This is like one of those ones that gets woven into everything we're doing. But raising money and being more intentional about my philanthropy work is really a priority and something I want to do, but I just need to figure out how to make it a part of everything else I'm doing. But I want to start actually measuring the fiscal impact that I'm having, and it's not necessarily like 50,000 out of my own pocket, but whether it's myself, businesses, but then also just raising money through events. We've talked a little bit about like Balderoo, where like I want to have a huge event for the Balder public where we sell tickets and we get artists and we do all these different things that I think will be awesome to do, but I didn't feel extremely comfortable breaking that out and tracking it as its own thing, because I think that's, again, a byproduct that I will be privileged to have, assuming I can hit my other professional goals.
You know what I love? I love how you still have all these ideas, but you have been able to down to a couple. That's crazy.
It's hard, man. It's really hard, but I think it's nice to have 32 years of data to look at and be like, I wish I had done this 8, 9 years ago, you know, because it's like, and I think about the amount of time that I spent doing certain things. And just like what you were saying at the beginning, where, you know, let's say that you have 10 hours in a day and you have 5 things you want to do, that's 2 hours for each thing. If you did spend 10 hours doing just one thing, you're going to get a lot further with that one thing than you would if you had 5 different things. So I think it's really in the spirit of being the tortoise too. Like, I don't know how focused the tortoise was, but I just want to be really focused. And I don't necessarily know, like I haven't really introspected and reflected enough to know like if I'm intentionally distracting myself, which I got to talk to you about some of the stuff I've been learning about distractions in our lives, right? And like the emotional drivers of distractions. But like, it's a really interesting thought that I want to get deep with in terms of, you know, like really wanting to do something and then doing it. Right? As opposed to finding a million other things to distract yourself with. Everything can be justified. I mean, even just since we met last week, I've had 2 other business ideas that I really want to run into. But it's having great people in my life like Kay, you, and even my mom too. She's like, will you shh? Will you shh? I'm like, yes. We'll pick this up in 2026.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy, and this wrestle's good. And also, when you start diving into, I love, first of all, goal planning is honestly half the battle. So kudos to you. I can't wait to kind of hear how you're processing through that. But let me just tell you, it doesn't mean you won the battle. I mean, just starting to execute on your goal is very complex because you're thinking about other dynamics in your life, plus also the things that could go wrong. Plus also, you may set certain habits and priorities and challenges that don't fit, and you got to change them up, and that's why it's so difficult. But the less amount of goals you have, the easier it is to maneuver. Imagine if you had like 7, and you're just like, you just kind of, things go by the wayside. So this is going to give you the opportunity to really focus in and get more done.
Yeah, and so coach me through this too, because I think part of what helped with the challenges of each goal is like, so I'll have my balding routine and my chaos routine, let's just say, which it's real, it's on my calendar, but knowing what my challenges are, so you think about like building a team and building relationships, my advisors, my mentors, starting to really formalize those things. Every day I'm going to try to make a phone call or at least an email or a text message to those people as part of my working session for that each day. So 100,000,000% things will change, but I think they're broad enough to help me know what I should be doing, and then in a given day they'll get really specific. But I think too, as I start unraveling those threads, it'll be really interesting to see where they all take me. And you know, with any project plan, I mean, they're gonna blister too, for sure.
So walk me through one of them. Let's kind of talk. Start from the top and now ask questions as you go along.
Okay. Some of this, I guess this one is chronological. So this is Raise Series A for ABC. The first challenge, I will develop and build relationships, and I have in parentheses advisors by the end of Q2. Identify key team members, co-founders. This is the end of Q3/Q4, so not going to obviously rush that, but it's something I'm going to definitely be prioritizing. build system requirements and roadmap. I'm going to try to have this more or less completed in terms of the deliverables by quarter leading up to an MVP by the end of Q3, and then building an investor deck and scheduling meetings by the end of Q4. So actually conducting those meetings by the end of Q4.
This is great. I want them to be a little bit more clear because, I mean, even with advisors, how many advisors do you want? Like, get as clear as you can on that so you know exactly what you need to do. Because if you're like, I want 5 advisors, then that can kind of shape, well, how many people do I really need to call? How long is it going to take me to get to 5? I might have to go through 30 different people. So let me map out for a quarter, what does it look like to call 30 people? Then I can get my 5 advisors out of that. So the more specific you can get to really influence the habits you have is going to be big.
Yeah, and just talking through it a little bit more too, I think there's different, I don't want to call them levels, but one of like the real genesis of this too is like opening back up some of the mentorships that I've had in my life, especially in the healthcare space, especially in the technology space. And then there's also like a very formal strategic advisor. And I have here too that we'll talk about where like every couple of weeks I want to be updating people, right? And so like who is that maybe initial board of directors or strategic advisors that I really want to bring into the fold that would understand what I'm doing and then can also help lead me into the right talent pools? Because I think that's been one of the biggest challenges with ABC too is knowing that I'm building custom tech on this, so it's not something that I can manage with, anything but lackluster. And like the developers have to be really great, and there's a lot of I don't want to call it like privileged access, but it's not easy to find them, and then it's also not easy to sell them. I just want to focus on selling them, but how do I find them is a big challenge that I have to overcome.
Yeah.
Which is kind of bleeding into that co-founders, right? I think this is where having these types of conversations around, big equity pools and virtually zero pay. And again, there are people that I've had serious conversations with and know what their bare minimum salary requirements would be. Family men, family women, people that do have to make some sort of living, but understand the vision, understand where you're going, but then also making sure that you have a roadmap to get to where they need to be from an equity perspective to either take loans and this, that, and the other. So to realize real capital from their investment is you're going to take a lot, especially not knowing like everybody that's part of that picture too.
Yeah.
So none of that will even, I think this is the other thing too, like neither of those are a science. I think the next two, so like actually building out the system requirements and the roadmap, that is very finite. It's definitely going to change between now and let's say 2 years from now. But getting to a real clear picture of what this platform does, what it's intending to do, when it will do certain things, is so important to the next piece too of what am I selling? So I think those last two, and just to be really clear too, so like I don't see any of those challenges happening by themselves. They're all part of like,
Sure.
And I have this here, like this chaos routine. Cool if I go into it?
Sure.
So for habits and routines, the first habit is kind of research and education. I'd love to sit here and tell you like, I know exactly what I'm doing and how to do it. I don't, right? You take something like the calendar, for instance, right? I don't know how I'm going to build a new calendar, but I know the world needs a more in-depth, dynamic calendar function for the rest of their lives and the rest of their tasks and really for the whole ecosystem. But I don't know how I'm going to do that. Like I think a lot of people from the outside in, they may look at it and be like, well, you just like, chat GPT it, like, no, it's just not how it works, right? Like there's some real ingenuity and intuition that needs to go into just the design and creation of these different things, regardless of the platform, where you're hosting it, how you're building it, to what degree you're going to engineer the entire infrastructure. There's so many parts of it that I have to spend a lot of time researching and learning. So I want to be thinking of you as my inspiration for this with like tidying up your apartment. I don't want to spend a week deep diving and researching and educating myself. I want to prioritize the things I'm doing, and I want to spend time every day learning something that I can apply to the last two deliverables, which is the roadmap and the actual investor deck.
This is great. Okay, I really like that one. How are you figuring out where you're going to put it in your day?
What I have right now is basically, and I have an AM work session. You notice you didn't see me at the gym today. I think it's a new thing. I didn't really like the afternoon crowd at the gym, but we'll get to that another time. But I have an AM work day, which is really going to be like an open space where I want to hit my first and most important priority. Mostly on the busy work side, but call it an open session. And then I have a balding routine and a chaos routine. So I want to focus really my afternoons on ABC for the future. Right now I have it as like a 3-hour working block, but I do think there'll be some threads that I pull on that'll be really late nights, and then I'm sure there'll be other days where, maybe I'm not flowing well and it's shorter, but just kind of giving myself some grace to always have an afternoon block, and it is 7 days a week. I think this is something that I have a lot to do, and I think the more I do now, the better I'm going to be able to build the right infrastructure around me. So I'm not going to rush myself, but I want to make sure I'm doing a little bit every day.
7 days. Interesting. Why did you go with 7 days a week?
I don't like off days. I just get off on off days. Like I may have came off wrong. I don't enjoy off days. Like I love when I'm flowing and just moving. And the other thing too, I think maybe as a good tangent here, but like I am done with TV. Like it's not even something where I'm gonna start like having a Sunday where I just catch up on my shows. I'm done with it. I've been telling you about all the reading. It's been amazing to me and encouraging and rewarding to see how much I can learn and make progress on that reading list that I continue to complain about. But like I just don't want to have anything in my life that's not adding value to who I'm trying to become. I'm very serious about it because it makes me self-deprecate. And like we could use like the food example where you were saying it's communal. I ruin it. I ruin it for the community. Like I just take things to an unhealthy level when I give myself those freedoms, but I just feel so good when I'm on it. And I think that's really the focus. It's not about like the deprecation or feeling bad. Like I just love being on. Everything feels great.
A lot of this, I'm just going to let you kind of figure it out. You're going to work through it, and I trust that you're going to make adjustments. The one thing I will say to it is there is something healthy about a recovery time. And I think when you think about sustainability and to make sure you don't burn out, having a day to really, okay, my mind's not on this, it actually can be really helpful. You can become even more imaginative and think about other things, and doing something else might leverage that for your business, right? So I don't want you to completely throw that out the window. You went very extremist here and just said no TV. People watch it like, oh my goodness, never mind. Click, I'm shutting this off. No, stay on. Just as picture, like you did go real extreme. I'm not gonna bash you for that. I mean, it's totally fine, but you have to be able. First of all, rest is important. So to be able to shift your mindset from work, and have a day where you're like you recalibrate is going to be very, very helpful to you. But how that happens, I'll let you figure that out. I just don't want you to burn out in the midst of it.
I appreciate it. I have a little bit of a solution here too. I think so the research and education, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, system specifications, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, relationship building I have daily, and then bi-weekly, so like Sundays are really just reserved for that status update. So like I envision bringing people on board and having like a very informal Sunday update. Right? So like not every day will be on it, but I think just figuring out the right ways to always keep talking about it, but give myself that variability. And my life too. Like I think what I like about planning to do something 7 days a week is I know for sure there'll be something one day a week that causes me to not do this. So I think at least having the structure in place for 7 days a week gives me more flexibility of knowing well, I don't have to do it 7 days a week. If I end up having to, or wanting to take Kay out, right? Or wanting to go and spend time with my family up north, like having that grace it's there. It's just informal.
I'm going to let you figure it out. I love this. This is why I love goal planning. You create a plan, and then once you put it into practice, you're going to figure out how effective it is.
Yeah.
Kay will let you know, family will let you, everybody around you will let you know if they like your plan or not. And so as long as you're stay open to feedback and open to change, and you're going to be okay. You'll find a way that really works well with your life. But the plan, it's just a plan, right? It's once you execute, you're going to get a really better idea on what really fits.
Yeah, and I love overlooking the creative process here too. Like there's going to be days where I'm just a dud, you know? Like there's nothing coming out, right?
Dude, that's one thing I was thinking about when you were talking. I was like, man, I have days where I have nothing. You know, it's like you have your plan on what you want to do, and it's like, I can't do any of it.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to change things up and say, you know what, I'm just going to just completely do something more spontaneous.
Go to yoga.
Go to yoga. Or just like, I'm going to go to Six Flags. I know it sounds crazy, but just do something out of the ordinary that can actually get those juices flowing again.
Yeah. And, you know, yes, we'll leave it at that. I could take it a million different ways. It's all saying the same thing, for sure. But I really did enjoy this concept of like figuring out what the right routines and habits to help accomplish the challenges. It was really interesting. And I think as I transition here to the priorities, they're a little bit more specific, but they're still not like something I can accomplish in 2 to 3 hours. So like something like updating my LinkedIn, like that's a priority and probably something like sooner rather than later. But you think about like some of the conversations even you and I have had with people we met, I need that. And I even need to make sure I reach back out for recommendations on some of the software I built in the past and starting to really curate my LinkedIn so that when I have conversations and I'm saying that I've built hundreds of millions of dollars in technology for XYZ, it's validated. You know, so there's like things in here too that I added as priorities. They're not one-offs per se. I think they fit in here. And then I did things like daily working sessions too, which I think is obviously what we're alluding to on this. And then like develop roles and responsibilities. And I think this is something too, you know, the last 4 startups that I've done, they were never things that, they were force multipliers, right? So it was things that I did everything, and then I had contractors and people that I could work with to force multiply what I was doing. When it comes to this startup life here, like I was even thinking about different concepts of like, you know, a $12 an hour job for somebody to just come in and talk to me about what they like with health and fitness, right? What do they like with mindfulness and meditation? What is some of the stuff that they stress about with their wealth and how to actually manage their finances, right? So like starting to actually build a really diverse and dynamic team of people. And I joke about this with like, I don't know what Steve Jobs movie it was, but there's like this dude, Chris. And like Chris ends up getting screwed in the end of the movie. He gets nothing. But like I love the idea of like figuring out who's the guy that's gonna help me move stuff around the office. You know, like who are the people that just want to be a part of it? And I think this is part of where I've been polluted too. And I talked to Kay about this where like we normally work out first thing in the morning and then we go to work, right? Like when you go to the gym at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, like there's so many other people in the world that do not feel a need to wake up at 5 in the morning. It's very fascinating, right? Like it's very amazing how you can just develop these thoughts about the entire world based on our experiences of going to the gym and going to work.
It's funny how you said it's like, wait, other people do this? They work out in the afternoon, they sleep till 8?
Yeah, well, it's funny because Kay got like can't wait to get home and talk about death culture with you. You know, she's like, how's the gym going? And I was like, by the time I get home, it's going to be really productive, you know? And it is interesting because it's funny, and especially like as people trying to solve people's problems, how connected are you to the people? But anyways, long story short, like developing roles and responsibilities in a really creative way to start building more hands that can help me achieve these goals as well has been something I'm excited about.
Those are great. The challenge with those is they're still really big. You know the sheet that you have under there? I really feel like you can break that down because
this one, right?
Even when you said update LinkedIn, I'm like, what does that mean? Do you want to update your bio, or Like, so I think you
Yeah.
need to really just what those things are.
For the company too. You
Yeah.
know, I think that's the other thing that, and part of my hesitation too is like, and you've seen it with like my Instagrams and Facebook. Like, it's so annoying to start at zero.
It is.
Like, it really isn't fun. And at some point, you need to pull that trigger. You know, so why not get that moving? So this will really definitely be helpful.
Yeah, so I definitely say that, and I would almost. So the things that you mentioned felt like projects, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
So still a little bit too big. I think you need to even think on a smaller scale of maybe it's make a list of potential advisors. Like that's a good priority of maybe it's combing through your phone, combing through your LinkedIn.
Bottom right.
Let's go. So to me, those are great priorities.
I thought about you the whole time doing this too, because, and this is good, I think, for the cameras too. Like, it's really fascinating to size, because the bigger the goal, when you get down to a priority, it's probably a goal, right? Like, all of these priorities are challenges that can be broken down into further habits and routines, priorities. So I think how you size things is really fascinating. But regardless, I think with any goal, and I think these are pretty normal-ish goals, normal-ish, they're normal goals. So I think as people work through this process, like, you just have to keep getting to smaller and smaller bites. The best way to eat an elephant. It's a thing, right?
I mean, that's honestly the best way. And so I love that because even if you said for LinkedIn, I'm going to update my bio today. So much easier to kind of think through, all right, just focusing on my bio. Once you get in there, it's interesting. You start to kind of get a feel and you're like, okay, I can do a little bit more in here. And you might do more than you expect, but the challenge that we have with priorities is sometimes we don't even start it because it's too big in our head. So how do we make it so doable that we can jump on it really quick?
Which is really interesting when you think about a lot of, like, some of these priorities, like build a friend advisor list, is also getting back in touch with meaningful people in my life, right? I think those are the types of things where, like, updating my LinkedIn is something that should happen anyways, regardless of whether it's in the guise of raising money for a Series A. You know, so I think there's a lot of those synergies throughout this too that are healthy.
Here's what gets really cool and fun. It's like, I want to nerd out on this for a second, is when you have the data of doing and completing a goal, when you have the priorities and habits and challenges and all of that. Because then you can start to see, all right, here's how I did with this one. I completed it. Maybe if I push this up further or I add these priorities, I can complete this faster. You start getting it down to more of a science, and it's really cool how you can really move a lot of things because you have more data. So this is helping you get more data. What are the type of priorities you need for the goals you set? What are the type of habits you need for the goals you set? What are the type of challenges you need? And the more you kind of get them in a place where they're working together, dude, it gets really fun and easier to do.
Where are you doing that? And this is where, like, I basically I made a huge denormalized table in Excel where, like, you know, raise, all the different challenges. And then now I have to go through and do the denormalization for all the different challenges too, because I want to be able to filter it. You know, I want to be able to look at it on a regular basis. So let's say I get all of these into a workable document. I want to just be able to filter for Q2 right now, you know, and just look at those. And there's not going to be like one or two. There's going to be a lot of priorities there. So when I think about the specific tasks within my routines, I'm going to do this legwork because I think that's, and we talked about it last session too, where it's like, there's a lot of work that goes into this. And I think doing that work, I wasn't even thinking about doing it so that I could also get better at the process. I was thinking about doing it just so I know what to do.
Yeah,
I have thought about swearing so many times in this conversation. I'm really proud of myself.
you're doing great. You're doing great. You're going to figure out systems. All that will come. I think just this alone is great, and then we'll build upon it. But I'm telling you, this is like the first step. And what else I want to give you, I think this would just be a cool exercise for you because I think a challenge with priority planning is timing. When do I do everything? And so this is just to remind you, like, there are some things you need to think more end of the day, end of the week, end of the month, next month. Okay. Like, just kind of like start to, as you priority dump, maybe even start to bucket, like, okay, what needs to be done now or end of the day? What needs to be done at the end of by the end of the week? What needs to be done by the end of the month? What needs to be done next month? And this really is going to help you with some of the urgency of what is really urgent. If I'm planning something, because sometimes we don't put a lot of thought into strategically of why we're doing things at a certain time. It might be because you just like doing it better, and you want to try to avoid that. You want to do things because it's relevant to what you're working on now. So if there's something with ABC, something with Bald, you want to make sure that the priorities you're doing and the habits you have, all the things that are working together, make sense. Not just, I feel like doing this today.
Yeah.
The more you can avoid that and you're more strategic with what you're choosing, the better you're going to be able to priority plan and get things moving.
I'm fascinated to just, in the entrepreneurial life, but it's not just that. It really is, I think, actually specific to the entrepreneurial life. Like, you're going to determine when you need stuff. It's really fascinating, and I'm always really humbled too by so I spent an hour and a half today on the phone with, just call him a friend for now, but just reviewing my cost per click, what we've been doing for marketing, getting their feedback. It's like, I didn't plan on that. It certainly wasn't urgent. It was really important, but it wasn't even accounted for. I've known I needed to get back to them because they wanted to support me, but the time provided, so I just called, right? Got them, perfect, had a great conversation. And then there's also things that come in my life, so I looked at a really nice warehouse today. And obviously, I've just committed to at least some short-term office space, but these things just come out of nowhere, and they come out of nowhere, and you're always going to be doing the best you can with what you have. But I'm just so amazed too at the power of manifestation, and I think the challenge of focus. It's so fascinating to me. But I also think the long-winded, nothingness that I'm saying right now is, by putting these goals and breaking them out and giving myself timelines, it's going to help me actually make some sense of when certain things are needed. Because I could easily look at my life and say, I'm not going to run out of money for 5 years. I could just mess around for 5 years and do nothing, which is, obviously not the case when you think about all the things that could happen. God forbid I get into a car accident or something like that, right? But it's really interesting. It's fun.
I think you nailed it. It's the stuff that you don't account for. That's the interesting stuff. Yeah. And it's going to be cool for you to kind of see, based upon what you do and what you set, how it kind of navigates. And I'll say this again. I've said this in multiple episodes of be gracious to yourself, give grace to yourself, because there are some weeks I'm okay with this 75% flow, average of how I'm pushing towards my goals. There are some weeks it might be in the 60s. So you can't have this mentality of terrible week, because you can't allow the weeks to mess you up, because it's a goal. This is long term. So there are going to be some weeks where you hit something really hard with ABC and you're just trucking on it, and ball is pushed aside, things are pushed aside, it happens. And you just got to be able to know and step back, pick your head up, and say, okay, this happened this week. Wasn't the most productive week with these things. This was kind of productive. Okay, here's where I might need to adjust the next week. That's how it is, almost week to week. So you just got to make sure you're really, really flexible, because your plan, it's a plan. It's not going to go out the window, but it will be adjusted a lot. A lot, bro. I'm telling you, I changed my plan so much, and it's okay. It's a part of it.
So, and I haven't told you too much about why I'm not going to do the morning gym, but it's actually a very intentional prioritization of my mindfulness. And it's called CCC routine, and it's contentment, confidence, and courage. And so it's for my reflection, prioritization, planning, my principles, but like I'm spending so much time at the beginning of my day, literally 2 hours, and there's some reading in there, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm really trying to commit to just being my biggest fan, giving myself grace, but also just having the best possible day I can have every single day. Because it's something too, it always becomes a second thought, like, oh, I got to go meditate, or, oh, I have to, like, I'm really trying to be intentional about starting every day with all the right reminders. I really got on, I used to love Maya Angelou, and I like randomly came across, I left my phone at home accidentally on Monday when we went to the gym, and this random podcast that I used to listen to was on my watch, so I asked, I said, Maya Angelou talk about courage. And like, it's just so interesting the way that like these things come into your life and just shake stuff up, man. But like, there's so many amazing people in the world, and there's so much stuff that like just gets me fired up, like, but it's so interesting the way that stuff comes into your life at different times. But that was like the day I was like, I haven't even been talking about courage. It hasn't even been part of my principles. It's not even a word that comes up, but it's so applicable to everything I'm doing. And like to hear, of all people, Maya walking through what courage means to her and how important it is in the work that she did in her life, like fascinating, man. It was like so weird how much I needed that, but it was like, all right, CCC. I've been missing a C, which by the way, I have a tattoo, Colleen Catherine Kerrigan. It's my mother's maiden name initials. I was like always trying to make the CCC thing part of Bald Republic, but I couldn't think of the last C. Now it's confidence, courage, community.
Wow, look at that. Look at that.
You could
I love
say
it.
it was architected by the gods. But
Tell
sorry.
me what is getting you excited about this journey you're on, of now that you have set some goals and priorities. We also didn't talk about goal and priority setting as far as a skill, so I almost want to hear your thoughts on that. But what's getting you excited, but also what's kind of making you nervous? I mean, you're thinking by the end of the year you're trying to accomplish some things. Like, what are you excited about? What's maybe a little bit nerve-wracking for you?
Dude, the biggest thing, and we just kind of touched on it, is like I just don't want to stop believing in myself. I wish I was somebody that just had like really, easy goals. But I think I've mentioned it before, like I really believe I'm put on this planet to do something special. And the amount of time and energy and work that goes into just believing in yourself, at some time, it can feel a little bit ridiculous at times, But I think we talked a little bit about the compound effect and just knowing how much more work I have to put in and that I'm in control of that is exciting. But I think it's always just trying to balance the realistic aspects of our lives and then just believing that you can really do things that are unbelievable. I think it's like finding that magic between those two is like an everyday extravaganza for me. But I do think I've learned so much too in terms of helping to make sense of it. But I think the irony too is, in a way, it's nothing you didn't know. You just have a hard time coming to terms with it, right? Like the 168 hours in a week. I think everybody wants to assume that there's more time for everything that you want to do. But again, after 32 years and where we started this series, right? It was like, I know that there's more in me. And I feel like I've made a lot of progress in trying to figure out how to channel the things that are really important to me.
I love it, man. There's so much that you're taking in right now, and I've already seen so much shifts and changes in your life, and so it's just really fun to hear. And I love just kind of like the theme of just like you believing in yourself and just staying on that, because bro, if you can believe in yourself for decades, you win.
It's that easy. Yeah. I saw something else, like another derivative of this. It's just really important, I think, for everybody to hear these things. It's like we're so accustomed to hearing the loud negativity.
Yeah.
But like, it's not hard for me to find the 5% of the people that are cheering for me and just focus on that. Like, just really laser in on how many people are rooting for you, believe in you, There's probably not a lot, but there are some. But it's so easy to focus on the other 95% because it's so loud. And I think in a way we're addicted to that fear, right? And just this world is set up, and it's such a distracting world that we live in. And just the art of staying focused, man.
Yesterday I was thinking there was a negative voice that was so loud in my head for the past couple months. And yesterday I thought about it. I was like, it's not that loud anymore. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, it's really cool to be aware and notice those things of, wow, this is nagging. This is nagging. Like, shut up. And then you get like down the road and you're kind of practicing the positive things and you're practicing your healthy habits. And then you look at it and you're like, it's not that loud anymore. This is awesome. Let's go, right? And so it's not even to say, like, I understand some people have some loud voices in their head that are negative. And I wish I could just say, just keep reflecting, it's going to go. No, sometimes it takes work. But it was really cool for me to recognize I don't think I've ever done that before. I was like, whoa, this is not that loud anymore. Like, I feel like within a minute, I was like, I moved on. That's a really cool feeling. And so I think that'll happen to you and multiple other people.
Yeah, and some things I think and whether we say it takes time or reps, right? Because I think this real journey of awareness, and again, like, I'm sure you're almost to a point where you like laugh at yourself for even giving it any volume, right? But when you start actually figuring out how to turn it down, and like, there's so many fun tactics and tricks too. Like, I think Ed Mylett like literally thinks of himself as like erasing it on a whiteboard. Which, like, I think if that helps with your imagination and trying to get it out of your head, other people just turn the volume down. Just realizing you're thinking it is such a challenging task. And I think that's why I'm starting to spend so much time on it. Because when I have the moments, they're great, but I'm still, and I never will, 100% be aware of how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way. And it's a lifelong task. It's fun too when you catch like those moments you had. They're awesome. They're really awesome, man. I'm proud of you. That's great.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate that.
What was the negative thought?
It's not about me right now. We'll talk about that later.
And I know you said real quick on this too. So I was actually walking through this with Kay. I was talking to her just like, and we've talked a little bit about like my process of learning and how I really help like commit things to memory. Is basically talking to her about like where she would be on this. And one of the things I realized is we started talking about me from a challenge perspective, but I think I actually reside a lot better with habits. So like I really bumped myself back down to like starting with habits, and just like we're doing now. So writing down my goals, reading my goals daily, I am planning to just kind of work left to right on this column or this row. And just kind of giving myself some time to get in the groove and start working through this. And then, even getting to the point of like visualizing my goals. We've talked a lot on this podcast about vision boards, right? But like just trying to take the whole spectrum of the habits and goals and just look at them, think about them, and where it makes sense, do them.
Do you know the benefit of that? Like in your head, what you feel like is the strongest benefit?
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know if we like really drilled into it, but there is a reason why I have not written down my personal goals, right? Like I'm not running from them, but I'm really scared about the process of running to them, right? And actually like developing this legacy that I feel and I know in my dreams, like why have I not actually written things down to get me closer to it? I think some of it has to do with the amount of work that's involved in writing it down, potentially just to start over. But I think too, after so much time and knowing the prescription of unlocking more, and like, I kind of was hard on people too about like, why would you not journal? Why would you not write down your goals? Like if they're important to you, write them down, put them out into the universe and figure out what it's going to take to accomplish them. I think it's so easy to talk the talk. It's so much harder to walk the walk.
It's good. Writing them down makes it real, for sure. And saying it every day, one of the best benefits in my mind of saying it every day is there are people that I'm connecting with that are helping me with my goals. And the more I think about them and say them, the more I'm able to make those connections. So if it's not on your mind at all, then you're going to miss some great opportunities to push your goal forward. But if it is on your mind, and if you can drop a hat, someone was in a sauna the other day, and we just started talking, and we talked about my business and goals. It just like went into this like 45-minute long conversation, and it just reminded me, if I wasn't thinking about this, I would be stuttering my way through it. But it was so fresh on my mind, and it was so tangible that it led to a great conversation and follow up from there. So I think that alone is so valuable for you, and just by saying it and talking about it, oh my gosh, it's gonna make this even more real.
Yeah, I'm really hung up on this doing something uncomfortable every day, in the spirit of Goggins. But like I just, it's not comfortable. People aren't comfortable always talking about themselves or talking about their goals, right? But front and center, what's important to you, who you're becoming, it gets a little bit easier. But I think knowing that you're doing something uncomfortable too, you know why you're doing it.
100%. It's good, man. I love that you went to habit, because I wasn't going to tell you where to start, but I think it's a great place to start.
The real determinant for me was when I was like, I am in no way, shape, or form anywhere near qualified to start leading a conversation on habit building. I think when I hit that one, lead a priority setting workshop, that was the one I was like, I need to look at this second row.
Then it's working.
Yeah. That's really great. And I've given you this compliment, but one more time, like just looking at it all laid out. And it is interesting too, as I get to like probably where you are on this chart, I'm like predicting what you're going to be doing next. And you're already doing it, right? But it's really cool stuff, man.
I love it, man. This is going to be really fun for you to work on. I love what you did, because what we've talked about with skill building is like, you just got to take a step and start. And that's all you're doing. Bro, just by reading your goals and your priorities, you're building a skill. Like, that's what fires me up. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to go to the seminar and get the certificate that you paid $5,000 for. Just start by reading your goals. And like, you work through that, bro. You work through that, bro, you're going to be better at goal and priority setting than 90% of the world.
I just also love the idea of, and obviously like we're talking about it in infinity here, and I think it's great that everybody can access this and hear it, but I just think this should start being as commonplace as how did the Celtics do.
Not too well. At all.
At all.
They're close. It's great. I love that. Love that start. I think it's going to be really fun.
But I mean, it was pretty amazing it got to Game 7,
Yeah.
Give them some credit.
The fact that you know that is awesome. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, they had it on TV at the gym.
Oh, man.
I just found out about Game 7 when I was filling my coffee.
Really? Hey, it makes great conversations.
It does, man.
All right, 2 more things I want to talk to you about. First is, I'm going to give you this. Now, I don't want you to overthink this. This, to me, isn't something that you need to, like, hang up. This is to help you, if you need, like, a 10-minute step back, like, okay, let me start big in a year. What are the big things I'm going through? Let me go to the quarter. What are my top projects and priorities? What's the month looking like? What's my week looking like? Just to help you pick your head up for a second. So this can be something you take, you crumple up and move away, but you need something that's going to help you recalibrate.
Yeah.
And so that's the main reason for this. I just call it like strategy session. It's to like, you're going to have moments where you hit a wall or you're like, I feel like I'm all over the place. And to be able to step back and think about, what is my week looking like? What is my month looking like? What is my quarter looking like? What is my year looking like? And just to get an idea of, all right, based upon this, where do I need to be putting my attention? Do I need to change anything? Do I need to shift anything? And to have something like this, I think is going to be really, really helpful.
What do you use for like, and man, I can't tell you how much I'd love, like if this was just the size of the wall in my office.
Oh, yeah.
What do you have just like a 12-month calendar in front of you? Because I can't say nothing. Obviously, like, we just talked a little bit about like building a new calendar experience. Mm-hmm. But like, how can I know the views I want of my calendars, but it's so hard to figure out like how to put it into what. Like, think tech is failing us. Sorry. It's a self-serving conversation, but do you use just like a old school like 12-month calendar?
And I have created a calendar. I printed it out before. I haven't updated it with like my new logo and stuff, but I've created my own calendar just to be able to see. I like seeing. I love the phone picture, but I'm a visionary. I love to see the whole picture, and so that's really helpful. And I do have a 12-month calendar in my office.
And I mean, like, the phones are great, but I think like if I want to see my quarterly goals for my personal play, professional, like there's not enough. Like it's hard, right?
Yep.
I think that's part of where like just color coding an old school calendar, but then being able to like change it if you write it in marker.
Yep.
Those types of things, but I digress.
No, it's very, very helpful. And I think part of what I want to be able to have something like that's big enough where you can see all of it at a glance.
Yeah.
But until then, I really want you to be able to strategize and to be able to go from big to small.
Got it.
And start almost with the big and then work your way to the weak. And it should change a little bit how you do that. And I'll also give that to you in digital form if you want to try it on your iPad.
Awesome, man. I was actually just going to ask you for multiple copies, but you gave me a bunch.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Came prepared. Okay. Energy management. Now, this is not something that we would per se talk about with goal and priority setting. This is more of measuring and managing your goals and priorities, which...
We're good on this, by the way. That's right. Yeah.
You're great?
Energy
Okay.
Yeah, well said. No problem.
So, we're going to go over anyways. And, I wanted to talk through this because this is such a big thing, and we'll work on a couple things together, but mainly I just want this to be something you work on homework-wise. You need to understand what is giving you energy and what is draining your energy. And you might have those thoughts in your head, but to really be able to articulate it and write it down is super helpful, because when it comes to your workday, you are going to constantly have things that are giving you energy. You're like, whew, I feel energized right now. What are those things? Or are draining your energy, I'm dead right now. What are those things? And I want you to be able to articulate that along with understanding your rhythm cadence. Like, this is totally messed up for you because this should say like 3 a.m. right here, right? But just what does your tank look like average throughout the week? Before 5 a.m., what is it like? Before 12, before 5 p.m., after 9, before 9, like what does it look like? And for you to be able to know this, I think it's gonna be helpful, because I love how you have set some like great habits and routines, but you need to be able to listen to your body and yourself to know, man, if I have a 1 bar at before 5 p.m., what are the things I'm doing there? But also, let me not try to force myself to work in a certain way that I don't have the energy for. And that's what sometimes we do to ourselves. We're like forcing ourselves to be a certain way at a certain time that our energy isn't ready for. So what do we either do to fill up our tank to get more energy? That's why I want you to think about examples. But also when to know is say, okay, I just need to recharge. It's not a good time to work. I don't understand why I will continually do that all the time. I know at certain points my energy's done, but I'll still try to do more. Like I know evening times, like that's why I struggle so much with my evening routine.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I laid out this crazy routine and I would never do it. And it would drive me crazy. I'm like, you don't have the energy. So guess what? I made the routine really, 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 really small and then slowly built it from there. So I want you to think about this, but I do want to start and just answer these 2 questions. I just want to hear what are some of your examples of high energy or things that give you energy, fill up your tank, fill up your battery. What are some examples of things that drain your energy?
Right now, right?
Yeah, just
So
top of your head.
The journaling, reflecting, working out, running, all things that fill me up, jack me up. I get such an energy boost. I feel great. The low battery, I'll just use like a specific example. Let me know if I'm just going down like the wrong path. And this is like I think this will actually be something that people will enjoy hearing or can maybe relate to, but like I get extremely stressed out about like family and vacations and like maintaining relationships that are not as easy to maintain. Love my family, but there's so many dynamics. So like the big thing, my dad has his 60th birthday August 5th, so Kay and I are making the trip up to Boston, and then it like kind of gets tacked on to like then can you do a couple days in Cape Cod with mom, and my siblings gonna be there, which I never see them, you know, and it's like you want to do these things, right? It has nothing to do with like not wanting to spend time with my family, but there's so much going on in life, you know, and then it's like knowing that sometimes those situations can be really difficult and stressful and there's so much personality, those things, just the conversations about them drain me, man. They drain me. They take a lot of energy from me. And I think part of my challenge too with those types of derivatives is like I tend to think I'll call my family back later on at night, but it takes a lot of energy, you know? But like some are West Coast too, so like I can't get them when I have a ton of energy, which I think is why one of the many reasons why my mom and I have such great conversations, because we talk at like 7, you know, and it's just perfect because I'm like ready to go, haven't had like a dreadful or dreary day, like things are great, battery's full, charged. But yeah, family, I think, and just certain relationships are difficult. I don't like that word difficult, but I also don't like the word draining, but help me out here. Am I on an island of my own? Am I messed up?
No, this is good. I mean, I like how you even said just even the conversations of it. It's almost like you're trying to take it all on. So that is something really cool to think about and talk about. But that alone, just knowing if you are going to have a conversation about that, maybe it's not best to have it like during your peak work hours, right?
Yeah, that's
So
such a great
that's the type
example.
of stuff that I want you to be able to think about is knowing the things that drain you. It doesn't mean that you don't engage with them. It just means that you have to be more strategic on when those conversations are coming up. So if someone calls you in the middle of the day and said, hey, we need to talk about family reunion. Okay, great. Can we do this at 8 p.m. later tonight? Because my day's kind of full. You're just protecting yourself so that you can preserve your energy for those things. I want to hear, I'm curious, like, even for these two, what are the signs that you know that, like, wow, my tank is full or my tank is empty?
So let's start with empty. I want to try to articulate something around like lack of self-awareness, but it's also like I'm just not as good at staying happy and being grateful. Like I tend to be a little bit more like irritable or frustrated, tired, you know, just generally tired. Happens a lot these days, I think. And it ebbs and flows too. It's not always just like at the end of the day like you would think, but sometimes I just get waves of just being exhausted, you know, randomly. But yeah, it's always a lot to do. And it's interesting because it's always in the following day's journal when I'll be like, when did your day go off course? You know, and it's like you have to think back to like how you're feeling. It's a little bit harder to do, but in the moment I'm not self-aware enough to be like, oh, get it back together, you know, or like find something to give you energy, go for a walk, go for a run. The moment's kind of passed, but those make sense in terms of examples?
Yep,
Okay.
makes perfect sense. Partially what I want you to know with signs and why I love thinking about signs is I want to be able to catch it sometimes before it happens.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm really moody right now. I can tell that means low energy. I need to shift something around because if I stay here, I'm just going to drag this out and I'll be unproductive the whole day. Sometimes for me, a sign of low energy is when I pick up my phone because it's like me like trying to relax in because I'm trying to like numb what I have to do. And that's like the sign of like, okay, my energy's low. So it's almost like go for a walk, take a lap, right?
That's cool.
It's like shifting your mindset of I know times when I have low energy, how do I respond to it? And then when I have no energy, how do I respond to it? But when I have energy, what are the things that I'm doing? Like, what are the best things to do when my energy is up? That's something you really need to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, what are the best activities for you to do when you have some great energy?
The early indicators too are interesting. I like that. I'm immediately always thinking about like how much more irritating my dogs can be in certain settings. Like sometimes like those are really good early indicators of like how frustrated or moody or trying to catch it before it turns into a much bigger issue. But I really like that. On the plus side, I mean, I'm just happy, you know, like when and it's really, I really feel like it's getting back to like reps. It's a skill. Like if I'm good, if my energy's charged, if I'm good, I'm good. I'm happy dealing with my problems in a really good way, not distracted, you know. I liked your example of using the phone. I think that's probably a good sign of when my battery's depleted. I think I do tend to find distractions a lot easier. Even if it's just going into things that aren't part of whatever I'm supposed to be working on. Like maybe it's productive, like checking email. You know, like, are you really checking email again? Like, do you not know? Like, you just looking at old emails now? Like, I do it all. I have a bad habit of it. I think it's, you know, for a number of reasons, but I like that as a sign. That's good.
It's a reminder, like I said before, we're not robots. We're going to get distracted, but there are things that we can do, like knowing the signs, knowing examples of how we can fill up our tank or things that are depleting our tank to really help us have a more productive day. Yeah. When I say productive day, I'm not saying 100% productivity. I'm like, let's just get in the 80 to 100% range. If we can have that more often and we end the year with above 80%, man, we are winning.
Yeah.
Winning with priorities and all the things, because our goals are really our priorities and our habits. If you think about it,
it makes sense. I am invigorated knowing that like none of my good habits I've been working on are on the bad side. You know, I think that wouldn't have always been the case. I think like running and different things like that. Reading is one I would say is like as far left as possible. Like I can't tell you how like excited and energized I get from reading. And I don't know if I've just been blessed with a lot of like good books, tons of really good recommendations from everybody, but even I think like when you hit the bad chapters and like, you know, kind of boring parts of books, it's still something to think about. But I really enjoyed that one, and that has not always been the case.
I love that. You're on a fun journey with everything that we've been talking about so far, and it's like this weird. I'm like trying to wrap up in my mind of like, okay, how do you articulate what's happening? But it's really just growth. It's like it's your growth journey. And we're living in days and hours. But my goodness, I cannot, like, I have like these time clocks in my head, like, what is the conversation at like January 2024 with Steven going to be like? No, seriously, think about that. We got to start like having these, I put in my calendar when I'm like, usually I'm meeting with someone, and I always come up with some sort of challenge. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put in my calendar alert to follow up with you at this date, because I'm like, what's going to be different about them? Dude, that fires me up. Like to think.
That's such a cool thought.
What is going to be different about you when we have a conversation in 2024? Hopefully, where are you going to be with ABC? Where are you going to be with Ball? Where are you going to be? I mean, there's so many things that could be so different because you're intentional with your growth. It's like, dude, how can this life not be fun, right? We get to create something so beautiful, and it's like, I love it.
I want to say something too about, you know, it's a common topic of conversation at the house, but like fun also means uncomfortable and annoying and hard, right? Like this is something I think like it's really refreshing to remind yourself that. And I think Kay and I are always in such a fun yin and yang of like, you know, yes, today's great, it's the best day ever, but I also have to go pay the piper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, man? Like these days don't necessarily look or feel fun doing it, but I think knowing why you're doing it and where you're going with everything, it's worth it. But I just always like, I don't want people to have the expectation like that they're going to do this and then they're going to be able to just have like these awesome days where they go to Six Flags or water parks or just hang out with their friends all day.
Such a great point, man. And the underscore with this, and I think with the Murph Challenge, it was just a great reminder, is this art of doing things together. Because I think about, we did the Murph, and it was hard. It was hard. It was tiring. It was hard. but we were doing it together. We went out to eat afterwards, and we're just sharing stories. We're talking about what we experienced, and I was like, this is awesome. In my journal entry after that was like, how you feel? I was like, happy. Because it was just reminding me, yeah, we did a hard thing together. I'm not growing alone. The picture of, I think a lot of people are growing alone. That's why their growth journey sucks, and that's why it's not fun. Because there's all these things they want to do, and they get to do it, and it's like, they don't know how to navigate it, they don't know how to talk about it, they don't have anybody to do it with them. And to have people who care about what you're doing, know what you're doing, and are helping you push along that direction, dude, it is one of the best things about growth. It's to not grow alone, grow with other people.
I love it, man.
Let's go. Okay, so to close it out, I hope, and I know you do, I just want you to be reminded, this is like your North Star. Like, I want this to be something that is ingrained in you, because sometimes I have to just step back when I feel overwhelmed. There's so much is going on, and I just have to remind myself, okay, Ike, this is who you are. Ike, this is who you want to be. So let's close out by you just reading those.
I am ambitious, brave, humorous, innovative, intuitive, charismatic, entrepreneurial, driven, persistent, punctual, witty, charitable, emotional, faithful, friendly, determined, honest, hard worker, grateful, kind, knowledgeable, methodical, motivational, strategic, enthusiastic, empathetic, compassionate, competent, decisive, mindful, sympathetic, transparent, and zealous. I am becoming a patient and compassionate leader, a minimal and confident man without ego, an ardent learner and listener, ferociously present, a businessman who is focused on value, not money, disciplined enough to say no for who I want to be.
Let me just say this. With all the goals that you just mentioned, if you don't hit any of them, but you're working towards it and becoming closer to that, you win.
I love it.